So I am a professional slackliner, and I would like to give you an idea of what that means. Slacklining is a balance sport. It's where you take a flat, stretchy band and you put it between 2 points and you walk on it. So it's different than tightrope walking because the line moves, it's dynamic. This sport can be practiced a few feet off the ground or a few thousand feet off the ground, in my case. In other words, I'm my mother's worst nightmare. So to start off my talk, I would really like to give you an idea of what it feels like to be up there on that line. So imagine this. You are 200 feet above the ground. There in front of you is a 1-inch thick woven band that stretches from the tower you're on to a much larger spire across the gap. This thin line is your bridge to the other side. Your harness is on, your shoes are off, and you quickly tie into your leash. Next, you are scooting out on the wobbling high line. Despite the calm of your surroundings, your heartbeat is accelerated, and some small voice in the depths of your mind is growing louder. Go back. Don't do this. Now's not the right time. Let someone else go first. You'll probably fall. As these voices continue on, you're looking down far below. Your friends are small black shapes sitting and watching. And you have to do it. You have to go for it. And you can't help but imagine what it would be like to fall to the bone-crushing death below. Next, you are standing up, and the line shakes and sways. Your arms quiver as fear emanates from every pore. This is a sport, but it feels like the most important moment in your life. Now take a step. Don't stop moving forward. The sounds around you are dissipating, background noise unimportant to your success. Thoughts of falling creep in like gnawing rats, gnawing at your confidence. Logic resumes. You can do it. Just a few more steps and you'll be setting foot on solid stone, unquivering rock formed over thousands of years for your relief and achievement. You lock in for the last few paces. Your mind is empty of words, empty of sounds, and yet your senses are as heightened as they will ever be. The last step, and the cold, sturdy rock meets your feet. All of this energy for a few minutes of walking. And now you feel relief, humor, joy, and triumph. So 4 years ago, I could never have fathomed the feeling I just described. Mountains were, for a native Texan, as foreign as the snow that tops them. I spent my time working 5 jobs. Fashion school was calling, and it had a hefty price tag, so an 80-hour work week was necessary. So this is when I encountered real fear for the first time, when one evening on my way home from work, I fell asleep driving my car and I flipped it over. In that moment, I felt that my survival was completely out of my control. Now, I survived, uninjured, and the weeks following, I had some realizations. I felt disillusioned with the social structure around me, when none of the friends I worked with would cover my shifts, and a job I devoted 3 years to let me go because I had no transportation. If the world was trying to tell me something, that was probably it. Now, I didn't immediately change my entire life plan, but I reconsidered my crazy work schedule, quit half the jobs, and started going to the park more often. This is where slacklining comes in. So I started just a few feet off the ground, between trees, which is the normal way. And though discouraged by the initial difficulty, as soon as I took a few steps, I was hooked. I had some realization after getting washing machined in my Jeep that the life plan I was on was not the right one, that I didn't want to spend so many of my waking hours working without passion or purpose. Unrelated to my new love of slacklining, I bought a one-way ticket to Europe. I decided to travel. I took my slackline along, but for the first few months, I couldn't find anybody who knew what it was. It's always been a funny coincidence that my name is Faith, considering what I do, and I seriously considered calling it faithlining and telling all the Europeans I invented it. So, finally, by chance, I met a guy who was going to a slackline festival. They have festivals there for it. And this is what led me to try slacklining high off the ground, and I mean really high. So soon enough, I was standing on my first high line, shaking and falling and scared, and even though I fought really hard, I didn't manage to cross it. I had never felt fear like that. The frustration of this failure drove me to seek out more high lines. And when I finally did cross a line, it was inexplicable elation, like seeing color for the first time. Different than tightrope walking because you don't have a pole and you're actually walking on a dynamic. That was supposed to be silent, but that was me talking about the difference between tightrope walking and slacklining. Anyway, free soloing. That's when I really started to see myself clearly. Free solo is when you walk the high line with no safety, no harness, nothing attaching you to the line to save you if you fall. So being out there, facing fear with death as the ultimate risk, stripped me naked to myself. I could see my ego, my doubts, my hopes, and my strengths clearly. Now, the ideal state of mind when you're succeeding on a high line is that of clarity and focus, which many say is like meditation. But I really began to learn that sometimes I had to keep walking despite the clutter in my head. And over time, I realized that I could use the fear and adrenaline as power rather than seeing them as an obstacle. So for me now, highlining has become a way to identify fear from other more meaningful driving forces, to analyze my fear and understand if it's logical or if it's just a primal reaction to the situation. That's the basis for distinguishing it from intuition. I understand that fear is not always bad. Humans need a certain level of fearfulness in order to survive, but I never want it to be an inhibitor in my life. Before I ended up 1,000 feet up in the pursuit of self-discovery, I was afraid of not being successful, of not making money. And if anything, highlining taught me that I could stare my fear in the face and walk past it. So, Texas style. What I do is just one lens to look at fear through. It's much easier to stay on the ground than to go out there and challenge myself. But the reward of self-understanding that comes with trying is well worth the difficulty. Thank you very much.